Hi, this is Kelly, and you're listening to Reading Between the Legs, honest talk on sex, health, and soul. So, for those of you watching this video on YouTube, you might notice something a little different today. There's no video of me. I kind of want to do this trial of audio only because I noticed something about myself that I didn't like so much in the videos. I feel like I was so focused on what I looked like during the video and how I was presenting myself physically that I'm afraid I was losing my excitement for the content. I really don't want to do that. I love what I'm talking about and I really want to make it sound exciting. And I think I was just so worried about messing up with the physical that I wasn't focusing on what was coming out of my mouth. So I'm going to try it out. Let's just see how it works. Watch or listen, I guess, and then give me some feedback. Do you hate it? Do you prefer to see my beautiful face while I'm talking? If so, I'll go right back to it, but I thought I'd at least try it out and see what you all think. So after this episode goes out, I'm probably going to put a poll out on Facebook or something like that to get some feedback. And please just be honest, because if you like the videos better, I would prefer to keep doing that. So today I want to chat about reproductive and sex education. This is episode 6, and we're going to do this in 2 parts. So today I'm talking about sex ed around the world, here in the US, and how it affects people of different countries. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on sex education. Part 2 is going to be focused more on sex education here in the US, and it's going to include a guest interview. I'm super excited about that. She is a sex educator and actually from my home state, Indiana. So I'm really excited to talk to her, and I hope you guys really enjoy part 2. So like I said, I'm talking about comprehensive sex ed and abstinence-only sex education and kind of the difference between the two. So first, I really want to explain to you what the difference is. So comprehensive sex education refers to K through 12 education that covers human development, relationships, personal skills, sexual behavior, sexual health, and society and culture, and how our sexuality is affected by society and culture. Comprehensive sex ed really aims to provide medically accurate and evidence-based education that's also age appropriate. And like I said, it's covered from K through 12. Abstinence-only sex education focuses on teaching social, psychological, and health gains by abstaining from sexual activity. And that abstinence from sexual activity outside of marriage is the expected standard for all school-aged children. Wow. It also stresses that monogamous relationships in the context of marriage is the expected standard of human sexual activity, and any sexual activity outside of marriage is harmful both to your physical body and also mentally harmful. The big thing about the abstinence only, I think that concerns me, and I will talk about this, is that under federal funding for abstinence only programs, they cannot include information about contraception or safer sex practices. So clearly, I'm going to talk about how I think about this. So I'm obviously very passionate about sex education because that's kind of what I'm doing here. This is my purpose, my calling in life, I swear, to help others understand more about themselves, both in their body and in their mind. I believe that our sexuality is a very important piece of who we are. I mean, every mammal reproduces through sex, and that's a basic instinct in most humans as well. I say most because not every person is sexual. Not every person has the need to reproduce. Like me and my husband, we're prime examples of this. We have no desire to have children. So sex is just going to happen for almost all humans. Now, I am more than aware of all the different beliefs out there surrounding sex. I grew up in the Catholic Church, which I am not going to talk badly about. It just doesn't align with my beliefs as an adult anymore. I learned some fantastic life lessons about how to love others, how to respect others. But as far as sex goes, it was taught to me that it's only used to reproduce and never, ever, ever should happen outside of marriage. Contraceptives were very frowned upon. I remember arguments about birth control, and nobody should be using it at all, actually. And abstinence only was beaten into my head, like very strongly. Abstinence only. This is the only thing that's acceptable. So as an adolescent and young adult, I felt that like sexual purity was so stressed that I literally didn't learn, I feel like I didn't really learn anything about my body or how to protect myself at all. It also led me to feel a lot of shame and guilt about myself as a sexual person. I've talked to my mom about this, so it's not like I'm speaking out of line here, but I mean, she even says, no, we didn't talk about sex a lot. We didn't give you a lot of comprehensive education at home. We're taught we teach what we are taught. And when she was growing up, she said it was taboo, not something that was discussed. And so it wasn't something that was discussed in my household either. So those beliefs are fine and dandy if we didn't have this little thing called a drive to reproduce, especially as young people. Our reproductive years are really, they can start at age 16 even. In reading around, different resources, the average age of the first sexual encounter in the U.S. is 17 years old. And a study I read, 50% of females and males between the ages of 15 and 19 have had sexual intercourse at least once. So sex happens. And we know what sex can cause, right? Pregnancy, diseases. Some of those things are life-altering diseases. And this is why I really think that we should be talking about this stuff. And comprehensive sex education is so, so important. Now, you may be asking, why do you think it's important that it should be done in schools? Because that's really what I'm talking about today. Shouldn't we leave sex education in the hands of parents to do at home? Yes, absolutely. I 100% think that parents should be the primary educator about sex and reproduction in a child's life. But unfortunately, not every young person has the privilege of having parents that can do that. Now, I'm not talking about privilege in race. I'm not talking about sex. I'm not talking about social standing or how much money, family, or a person may make. I'm talking about the privilege to have parents or guardians that are open, honest, comfortable, and most importantly, knowledgeable about reproduction and sex. We all have to realize that we may be in this fantastic position that we have parents, or we are those parents, that will sit and have those educational discussions with their children. But there are so many children out there that do not have this. There are kids in foster care, kids with one parent that works 4 or 5 jobs, kids with parents that use drugs and don't give them the time of day. I'm talking also about the kids who have parents that are not knowledgeable or that just don't care enough to have this conversation with their children. I'm also talking about these kids that are like growing up in these climates where sex is frowned upon. So all they learn is that sex is bad. They should feel guilty if they want to have sex. And you definitely don't want to do it unless you're married. So I know I talked about all these numbers in a past episode of where kids say they haven't gotten the information from their parents. And I really think that for the most part, numbers just don't lie. In the study I read, when asked, how did you first learn about sexual intercourse? 75% of those adolescents in that specific study said they first learned about it from their friends. And 62% of them said they learned about it from teachers. Now, mothers were next in line at 60%, but what worries me is the 75% of uneducated adolescents learning about sex from each other. How accurate do you think any of that information could be? In another study I read, they found that 54% of 12th graders reported that peers and siblings were their only source of information about sex. So 50% of kids that are at the age of like 17 or 18 only learned about it from their sister, their brother, or their friends. That is super, super concerning. Even in the little bitty survey that I did, that I didn't get a whole lot of hits, but I had enough that I feel like this kind of matters. 47% of the people that responded said they got most of their information about sex from friends. 29% said most of it came from school or their teachers. Only 5% of respondents said that they got most of the information about sex from their parents. So, yeah, I totally agree. Kids should be getting this information from their parents, but it sure does not look like that is happening. So when I was preparing for this episode today, I was reading a lot around the website. It's called SIECUS. It's the Sexuality, Information, and Education Council of the United States. So just so you know what it stands for, but it's SIECUS. And I don't think, so there's this article I was reading, and I really just don't think I could say this any better than they said it. Sex education isn't about religion. It's not about politics. Young people deserve comprehensive sex education because they are human beings, and humans have a right to the knowledge and skills they need to lead healthy lives and to make the decisions that are best for them. And that's 100% my beliefs in a nutshell. And, all of this knowledge should be about their whole body. I've said this before, but I'll say it again because I think it's a really good analogy. We teach healthy living to prevent things like diabetes, heart disease. So why are we not teaching healthy sexuality to prevent diseases like HIV, chlamydia, and to prevent unintended pregnancy? We have basic rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we should have the right to comprehensive sex education. Now, I really don't want to flood you with a bunch of statistics and numbers, but I think it's important for everyone to really understand what the real world looks like in the USA when it comes to the effects of misinformation and unprotected sex. So like I mentioned earlier, 1/2 of young people under the age of 19 have reported having sexual intercourse. And sadly, the United States ranks first among the developed nations in rates of both teenage pregnancy and STDs. Now, I'm going to be talking about other countries today, but I'm really talking about developed countries because I am very aware that there are underdeveloped countries, however you want to say that have very poor education, and their rates of STDs, HIV, and teen pregnancy are totally out there. And I'm not saying out there, I just mean it's hard to compare it to us because we have an education system comparable to places like Switzerland, France, Sweden, and those are the other countries I'm kind of talking about. So I know I'm talking about around the world, but really I'm talking about developed countries. So I just want to make that clear. So the CDC reports that young adults aged 15 to 24, represent 50% of all new STD infections. That same group makes up 70% of gonorrhea infections, 63% of new chlamydia infections each year, and HPV is by far the highest of all of these STDs at an alarming 90% of new infections in young people aged 15 to 24. That is wild. Obviously, we have a problem with this age group. 1/4 of teenage girls, so this is up to age 19, in the US has an STD. And these numbers I know are from 2015, but it hadn't changed much, trust me. The rates of new HIV, this is like, this alarms me, really. The rates of new HIV infections makes up 22% of the new diagnoses, and this is from the age of 13 to 24. Now, talking a little bit about teen pregnancy rates. They have declined, and they actually hit an all-time low in 2013 at only 5% of all. So basically, it's hard to explain this. So of all females with pregnancies, 5% of that were females aged 15 to 19. Now, that is the national average. There is a huge difference across states and races as well. So 7.5% of those pregnancies were non-Hispanic Black women that were 15 to 19 years old. 6% of the pregnancies were Hispanic women, 15 to 19 years old. And 3% was non-Hispanic white adolescents. Now, there's also, like I said, a big difference between states. In New Mexico, there's a large number, actually 6% of their pregnancies are women aged 15 to 19, and 2% in New Hampshire. So obviously quite a bit of a difference there. So even though our levels have drastically decreased in the US, we are still double the amount of teen pregnancies compared to other countries like France, which has a 2.5% rate of teen pregnancies, and Sweden at 3%. There are countries with a drastically lower number, like Switzerland at 1%, and the Netherlands at 1.5% of their pregnancies in a year have been teenagers between the ages of or under the age of 19. So, that's a pretty big difference. Our average is 5%, and here are these countries under 2%. Other developed countries, intelligent countries, under 2%. So what are they doing differently? Well, I'll tell you. Sex education, that's what they're doing differently. First of all, France, sex education is mandatory. So they start at the age of 6, and they include biological knowledge as well as cultural, emotional, and ethical aspects of sexuality. France also promotes, this is what I think is so awesome, and we will discuss this in a bit. They promote parental involvement in both primary and secondary schools. So they involve parents in the teaching at the school. So cool. I think that's awesome. So schools in the Netherlands are mandated, actually, to provide biological information about sexuality. They have this nationwide program that's called Living Together, and it has been mandatory since 1993. This program covers pregnancy, STDs, contraception, sexual orientation, values, respect, and healthy sexuality. It's also weaved throughout the curriculum. So there's not a special sex class or health class where you sit down and are shown pictures and scary pictures of gonorrhea and stuff like that. It's throughout the entire school curriculum. Those teachers are also specially trained to provide this information to their students, which I think is really cool too. They actually like have a specific thing or a specific training program that all the teachers have to go through to provide the same information and also accurate. So Sweden, which was, what was their number? They were at 3%. They were the first European country to require sexuality education in all schools without an opt-out option. And that started in 1955. So the opt-out option, if you don't know what that is, basically parents are able to sign something, sign a sheet that says, I don't want my child to partake in sex education in the school. So Sweden there's no option to do that. So their education program includes information about anatomy, gender, and relationships. I think it's also important to note that there is little difference in sexual activity among the US and these other countries in adolescence, like at what age they start. The big difference is in their contraceptive access and also its use, and also how the social attitudes in these countries. Like I said about Sweden, it's like they have a open sexual dialogue. So this, obviously will have a little bit of an influence on teens and their contraception use and their condom use. Just think, like a teen here is pretty embarrassed or ashamed to walk into a store and buy condoms. I've met grown adults that are like ashamed to ask me if we have any condoms in the clinic. But for a teen in France, it may be a little bit less shameful for them to walk into the pharmacy or walk into the clinic and pick up a pack of condoms, or to ask for birth control, or to ask for the morning after pill. So basically here it is. It all just comes back to education and decreasing the taboo of human reproduction, a basic human instinct in sexuality. Why is it that these other countries have made national mandates for comprehensive sex education, but the US seems to still really struggle with this situation? So sex education was implemented in the US in the late 1980s and early 1990s due to the rising teen pregnancy rates and the AIDS crisis. After that, we saw a huge decline in our teen pregnancy rates and STD rates. And like I said earlier, it reached like an all-time low in 2013, which is amazing. But the problem has now become that abstinence-only education is receiving all of this federal funding, which started in 1996, and they got a huge bump in their funding in 2006 and 2007. There are only 22 states in the US that mandate any kind of sex education. Any kind of sex education. 22 states. That's less than half. There's 27 states that mandate a certain requirements if sex education is even provided in the school. And only 13 of those states require that the information provided must be medically accurate. So we have 13 of 50 states that require medically accurate information going out to our children. Only 18 of our 50 states require information about contraception at all. Oh my gosh. Oh, seriously. Just saying all of these again. I read them earlier and now I'm saying them, and it kind of, it just blows, it absolutely blows my mind. 18 of 50 states are requiring information about contraception. So there's more than half that of children in the US that may have never even learned what a condom is, or that there's such things as birth control out there. Now, there are 25 out of 50 states that mandate abstinence only should be stressed, which I understand. And actually, comprehensive sex education doesn't, how do I say this? They are not urging our children to have sex at the age of 15. That is not the purpose of comprehensive sex education. The purpose of comprehensive sex ed is to give our children the big picture, all of the information, so that they can make educated decisions going forward. So yeah, we do say that if you wait, until you're older to start having sex, you're more likely to make better decisions. But at the age of 16, if you're going to have sex, these are the things that you should be doing, like using condoms, talking to your partner, making sure our kids know what consent is. I mean, that is something that is really big in the news right now, I know, but it's really important. So I just threw a lot of numbers at you. I know I did, but you know what all those numbers tells me? We're failing our children. I'm not into talking politics at all, and you should know that by now. And if you don't, you will continue to understand that. But we have a problem here. We are stressing our children to just say no. We're telling them that sex is bad. We're also sending this message that sex is for marriage only. And if they have sex before marriage, they should feel guilty and ashamed about themselves. We're not providing them basic knowledge about their bodies and how to care for them. And like I just said, we're also not teaching them things about, things like consent or pleasure. I mean, we are missing out on a lot about a person's sexuality by saying the only thing you should do is not have sex until you're married, and then you can do it. Now, I understand, and I've said it before, everyone has different beliefs. But this really has nothing to do with religion or politics. Reproductive education is necessary and a basic right for a person to be able to care for themselves, their bodies, and live a healthy life. I could seriously tell stories for hours about older women in their 40s that have no idea why they get a menstrual period, what the uterus does or where it is, or how they could even contract an STD. I had a woman in her mid-40s just recently that didn't know what HPV was and had no idea how she would have gotten it. I mean, we have generations of men and women that have missed out on sex education, and we are just so afraid to just speak up and do what's right for generations that are coming. I think another big thing we're missing is parental involvement, because parents should be involved. But if parents aren't knowledgeable, if they don't know the accurate information about reproduction and sexuality, how can we actually even expect them to be able to provide accurate education and information to their children? Some idea that I've had for years now, I have no idea how I would do it, but I think it could make a difference. We have, childbirth classes at hospitals and community centers. So why don't we have classes like sex ed classes for parents of how to talk to their child about sex? And here's information you may have missed out on. So let's talk. Let me educate you so you can educate your kids. I really think this is one of our biggest gaps in our education, and it's older adults. So I guess I'm going to jump off my soapbox. I really just can't help myself. And it blows my mind, because I literally see how lack of education and information affects my patients on a daily basis. And I just wish I could go back in time and change it for even one of them, so that they didn't end up with herpes, or they didn't end up with cervical cancer because nobody ever talked to them about using condoms or about what HPV was, or that they should start having pap smears at the age of 21. I just want to help people make better choices. That's all it really is. I want women to be educated and empowered and knowledgeable so that they can make the right decisions for them. I'm not saying everybody should have sex outside of marriage. I'm just saying you should have the knowledge to make that decision about whether that's what you want to do or not. Our children also have this right, and they should be able to make these decisions from K to 12. As 6-year-olds, they should start learning things like consent all the way up to grade 12. Because they're going to be able to make those decisions better if they have all of the medically correct information as they grow. So, this is part 1 of the sex education. Like I said, I have a guest speaker for part 2, and I'm hoping to get it out here in the next 2 weeks. She's a sex educator. Like I said, she's from Indiana, so I'm really excited to talk to her and to share her knowledge with all of you, because she actually does sex education for a living. And so I think that there's a lot of things that she can bring to the table here. So I really hope you all enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you learned a little bit too. If you have feedback or input, please share that with me, especially about the audio only, because I know it's different. Like I said, I just wanted to try it out because I think I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. But if it's not something that everybody wants, then I understand that, and I want to provide you with what you want. That's why I'm here. You know, I'm here to empower you. I'm here to educate you, but I also want to interact with you. So if you feel like the audio only is not good interaction, please give that to me. That's good. So another thing, I guess, is if you have questions that you want me to address in the interview with my next episode, please share that. You can share through Facebook, send me a private message, send me a message on Instagram, send me a message to my website, whatever it is. I really would love your feedback and all the love you guys give me. I really appreciate everybody listening, because that's continued support from all of you. And that's really what keeps me going here. So I really hope you guys have a great day. Have a good weekend. It's beautiful here in Massachusetts. It's supposed to be like in the mid 70s. I can't wait to sit on my back porch. So love y'all. Have a great day. See ya. Thanks. Bye.